Hi everybody, I'm Vanessa with Ronquita Design, and today I'm going to show you how to pin and the differences between pinning for cutting and pinning for sewing. So I need to cut this pattern piece out anyway, so I'll show you the pinning for cutting technique first. This has to be cut on the fold line. So my fabric is folded, it's facing towards me so I can actually see the fold line. And I'll only be cutting 3 sides. I will not be cutting this side here because it needs to be on the fold. One thing that's important is make sure your pattern piece is nice and even with that fold line. You don't want excess hanging off because since it's on the fold, it'll double that amount. And you want to make sure that you don't have extra or too little. So I lined it up. If you have one of these magnetic pin cushions, these are nice to set in the center because they're nice and weighted. Keeps your pattern piece from shifting. If you don't have a magnetic pin cushion, you can use your phone or anything else that's nice and heavy. So you want to go ahead and set this down here. Make sure it's nice and even. And when you're pinning for cutting, you always want to start with your corners. If you have a fold line that you're cutting, you want to start on the fold line because you want this to stay nice and even and be in the right place when you're starting. So I will start down here. When you're pinning, you'll take your pin in your dominant hand, and your non-dominant hand will kind of serve as little weights or anchors. You always want to pin inside your cut line when you're pinning for cutting. Do not pin with any pins hanging off because when you're cutting, you don't want to accidentally cut your pins in half and that'll ruin your scissors. So you're going to pin inside your cut line. Doesn't matter which direction your pin is facing, whether they're like this, if it's like this, if it's this way, it does not matter. Start with your on the fold edge. Non-dominant hand are your anchors. Dominant hand has the pin. You're going to poke in here, scoop up with your pin just a small amount, and your non-dominant hand is going to keep that paper down and help you push through so it pushes out. You don't need more than like a ½ inch, quarter inch to ½ inch of material on your pin because you want to actually be able to see that. If you have too much on your pin, it's really hard to even pin. You can kind of see like it doesn't want to go through. So make sure you only have about a ½ inch of material on your pin. Fix that later. Pin this other side. Notice my pins are facing different directions. It doesn't matter. And they're inside my cut line. So I've pinned the folded side. Now I'm going to go to these opposite corners. And there we go. With a pattern piece this small, these 4 pins are probably going to be enough. If I had a larger piece, I would want to use more pins. Now I'm able to actually cut my pattern piece out if I need to. And there's my pattern piece. Nice and even, pinned well, and it came out perfectly. Now for sewing, I'll just use these scraps as a demonstration. If I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together, then it's important that I see my pins. When you start to sew larger projects like dresses or pants or anything that's bigger than children's clothing or small bags, even bags, I guess at that point, you want to make sure that you're able to see your pins. Now, I see a lot of people pinning like this and sewing that way and just taking them out as you're sewing because they're facing towards you. However, when you're pinning, you're not really thinking about the direction you're going to be sewing. So sometimes the pins end up like this and they end up stabbing you. Sometimes you end up sewing with this side facing up and you can't see your pins at all. So that's why I don't advise that to any of my students. When you're pinning, you want to turn your piece horizontal, perpendicular to your body. And you want to pick it up a little bit so you can see your 2 pieces like this. Poke in just near the edge, scoop up about 1/4 to 3/8. This also allows you to get the pieces nice and even because you're able to actually manipulate that. Because when you start sewing bigger projects, you're going to need to actually make things fit and ease things in, and this allows you to do that. Another important thing about pinning like this for sewing is when you start sewing your garment or whatever your large project is, you're able to sew it this side facing up or this side facing up and still see your pins and take them out and drop them on your pin cushion as you go. It's just a safer way, so that way you don't get poked or stabbed, and also you don't run over your pins, breaking your needle, and that can cause a whole lot of problems. So there you have it. That's the information on pinning for cutting and pinning for sewing. For more tips and tricks, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Ronkita Design or at ronkita.biz for more information on classes.